Hey everyone, I'm with Drey, Hanson, Audrey, but her friends call her Drey, and she says call me Drey, so we'll call her Drey. You know your lover if you don't know her, you should know her. What a fascinating story. She decides to leave the comforts of what was um, as aspiring publicist job, Drey, and then you decided it was a Hollywood
I was
job, right?
working in Hollywood. Yeah, I was an aspiring, wanted to be a screenwriter. Worked at a couple of literary agencies. But it's all consolidated.
Well, it's still not too late. It's still not too late. You can still write the screenplays. And since then, she's like, you know what? I'm going to do Drey Dossier. And so as she was doing that, she did the Drey Dossier. And the Drey Dossier is a fantastic Substack where she is an independent journalist using all open, publicly available information to see how power intersects and how power is incestuous and how power is abusing all of us and our institutions, the dark corners of databases, how the money flows, and the corporate structures designed to obscure who actually controls what is how she describes it. And I've been wanting her on for such a long time, so I really appreciate making time, even though the time zones almost foiled this meeting.
And my need to have a digital and a physical calendar, and those not always translating between each other. Writing 3 p.m. just means 3 p.m., I guess.
It's
No,
the
I
way it is.
appreciate it.
No, I'm from the Bay. I get it. So the framing of today is how the world's worst people are profiting off an illegal war, and we didn't compare notes. I just had a feeling we could press live, but our assumption is that the grift flows, and it flows in a cyclical, incestuous way, and many of the same players will be connected. So let's spin the wheel of corrupt billionaires, and let's first start with Larry Ellison. And I know you have been fascinated with Larry Ellison and David Ellison. I've tried my best to warn about the Ellisons for a while now. Talk to us about why the Ellisons are such important figures in this ongoing grift and the profit off of misery.
I mean, they're pervasive. I wish I could escape them. It's like, it feels like they follow us everywhere. And that was kind of the thesis of my original TikTok series, Who TF Am I Working For? Was this idea that you literally cannot escape this man and what he's built. And then the more you pull at that thread, it's just everything untangles and unwinds. And you're like, oh my God, Oracle might be running everything. This is insane. And, from there, yeah, it gets pretty corrupt.
Larry Ellison is, I think, the sixth wealthiest man in the world, the single largest private donor to the Friends of IDF, the father of Nepo baby son David Ellison, a failed actor, who's then rich daddy said, all right, well, why don't you become the next Rupert Murdoch? And also Larry Ellison's daughter, I believe, runs Annapurna or A24.
Annapurna, yeah, not a lot of people know about or like talk about his daughter, but yeah, she's Annapurna, which does a lot of video game adaptations and like as somebody who worked in both Hollywood and was on the journalism side now, worked with those companies, the Skydance, the Annapurnas and stuff. Who would have thunk
It's
all of
all
this is
connected.
behind it?
It's literally all
Who would have
connected.
thunk? Yeah.
And that's what and the Epstein class in particular is another dollop there, which kind of like it just gives you a Rosetta Stone of like, oh, we weren't crazy. It's like the same group of incestuous, terrible billionaires who are just destroying the earth. But Larry Ellison, you mentioned Oracle. So Larry Ellison makes his money in Oracle. Larry Ellison also largest private donor to the IDF. Larry Ellison also big Trumper and MAGA. And
And CIA to start.
oh,
Oracle
talk to
was.
us about that. Yes.
Yeah, so Larry Ellison back in the 70s when he was just starting, like moved to California from Chicago. I know too much about this man. Moved to
Oh,
California from
that's why you're
Chicago.
here.
And yeah, he was, working on putting together a database company and he was oh gosh, I'm blanking on the other big database company. The one that he stole all of the like pretty much
Oracle?
code
No.
for. No, there's another one. It'll come to me in a minute. But he's was like, competing in the space, and then the CIA was like, "Hey, we have a contract. Does anybody want to bid on it?" Oracle bid on it, got the contract. IBM is the database listing it. IBM. But yeah, anyways, he started working with the CIA. They named the project Oracle, and so when he finished with that contract with the CIA, he took the name with it, adapted, Oracle into this pretty multimodal, like holding now consumer data and government data and like all of these different data types. And it's just kind of expanded from there.
And okay, so now he's made his money through Oracle. He's very hardcore with the pro-Israel government, very hardcore now with MAGA and Donald Trump. He also ventures out, all right, and he's one of the richest people on earth. Wants to live forever, by the way, and now he has his nepo baby son, David Ellison. Talk to us about David Ellison and how he enters the fray, specifically when it comes to the merger that happened last year that we tried our best to warn people about, but it wasn't a sexy story. And voila.
Yeah. Last year, like the merger with Paramount.
Yeah.
So that one was pretty messy. There, like David, there's not a lot. To be frank, there's not a lot really I feel like to know about him because he's just kind of, at least from I've never met him, never met the dude. I don't know anything personally about him, but from what I've heard, he's just kind of there, very clearly kind of running an operation. I think for somebody else. I think that somebody else is probably his father. And he was like I think he wanted to be an actor at one point when he was first starting out in the industry, and that didn't really work out. And so Daddy bought, Skydance, and here we are. Yeah, with Paramount Pictures, that was an interesting one because Paramount was originally talking with Sony, and that was going to be the merger that took place. And so, obviously, working in Hollywood, everybody's kind of keeping an eye on it and seeing what's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, Skydance kind of comes into frame, and I think that kind of took a lot of people by surprise because Skydance has made some great, films, and makes good money, but like never really made too big of a splash anywhere. And so when they came into frame and I was like, oh, well, who's this guy, David Ellison? And then I learned about Larry Ellison through that. And I was like, oh, who's this guy? Started like reading about who he was, what he's done, and how he tried, to like copyright and patent things from like code and just like literally the Silicon Valley of it all was like they hated him. They're like Oracle just stands for one rich asshole named Larry Ellison. And I was like, oh, so this is the guy coming into Hollywood. Great. And it got messy. Trump got involved, as things, started kind of coming to their close. It looked like Paramount was going to get it. And then I noticed something interesting, which in 2024, so this is before Trump took office, on November 1st, I believe it was, Trump filed that lawsuit against the Redstones for the, Kamala Harris talking about, Palestine or Gaza in some particular way and how it made him look bad or, a baseless claim. And I started looking into some of the other documents that were filed within 48 hours of that. And the day before that, Larry Ellison, whose name was prominently on that paperwork as the, main funder, and therefore, like, 80% of the funding was coming from him, the other 20 from Skydance, he removed his name and filed paperwork where it was just going to be David, who was like the
Mm.
head of it. And then his name was now completely gone. And then less than 24 hours later, a lawsuit hits, and all of a sudden everyone's looking at Skydance, Paramount, and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, this is an interesting relationship, these two. And turns out it's they've been friends for a while, Trump and Ellison. I think Ellison was one of the guys who was on the call of 2020 when Trump lost and was like contesting it with Sean Hannity and Trump's lawyers. Crazy.
Yeah, and so that's an interesting data point because David Ellison was the names in the papers, and the only connection was for nerds like us. Oh, he's Larry Ellison's son, but I did not know until he just told me that Larry Ellison, up until the last moment, removed his name. So he,
Yeah, he was like the prominent guy, and he was getting some flack, from people like in the industry who were like, "Oh, so great, he's gonna own Silicon Valley and Hollywood." But the like closeness of those two filings, and then knowing the history of Ellison and Trump, it felt like a bit too close for not coordination.
yeah, and folks, speaking about it, for those to follow just this through line, is David Ellison basically working for his dad, Larry Ellison, now merges Paramount with Skydance, massive merger, which means that the Ellisons, in addition to controlling Skydance, have Paramount and CBS, right? And so they get CBS and they give the first scalp to Donald Trump. The first scalp was Stephen Colbert. And then the second, go ahead. Sorry, you want to say
I was
something?
gonna say it was what was so frustrating from inside Hollywood. Everybody was making all of these excuses. Late night's dead. Late night, doesn't bring in the audience. It doesn't bring in all of this rhetoric about that's why Stephen Colbert. It's not a political thing. Everybody calm down. But like all of this happening, literally, Colbert was the number one late night show that quarter. Like just a few days before they pulled the data, and he was like, top for that. And then the upfronts for TV had just happened, which for anybody who isn't familiar with it, the TV upfronts are every spring in, I believe, May, where you, as a TV company, production company, you come out, you say, here's our slate. We have The Bachelor, we have Family Guy, whatever. And then there are spots that are bid on by advertisers for, great, we want this Super Bowl spot, we want this spot. And that's how they place all of their money before, the summer launches of everything. And that had just passed 2 weeks. We were 2 weeks past that, I believe, at this point, or like a month or so. And then they cut Stephen Colbert. Like, that's something they would have announced at the upfronts. So, like, again, that was another weird thing where they're like, no, if this was actually not about politics, they would have said final season, bid away. Like, so yeah, there's a lot
It
of
took them all by surprise, took Colbert by surprise, and then if it wasn't subtle enough, you saw what was the attempt by Brendan Carr to literally remove Jimmy Kimmel, and if it wasn't for the massive boycott of Disney Plus, Jimmy Kimmel would be gone. So you saw, first and foremost, CBS bribes Donald Trump to the tune of $16 million for the bullshit lawsuit that you mentioned because he was upset about, like, you did this edited story about Kamala, made me look bad.
I
Uh,
think it was I think it was bigger than that even. I think it was like it was like absurdly big, and then he ended up coming down to 16
Yeah,
million
yeah,
and
so he
accepted
initially sued him for, like, hundreds of millions, and then
that.
they paid him off for 16 million. So he gets the
Yeah.
bribe, the merger goes through. David Ellison, working, on behalf of or in tandem with Larry Ellison, now owns, Paramount, now owns CBS. Have you followed the Barry Weiss of it all?
I try not to think about her if I can help it, but, no,
You're not a
I
masochist
mean,
like me, well done.
yeah, I mean, in some ways, I mean, Larry takes up a lot of my time, I'll say, but, no, I know a little bit. I know she dated Kate McKinnon, which is interesting,
Yeah,
and,
incredible university, very interesting.
yeah, very interesting. No, I never really was a big reader of the Free Press, believe it or not. I do know she started a university, right? The Free Press
Yes,
or, like,
in Texas.
university? Yeah, there is some weird lore there, but, yeah, she's, very devout to whatever their, political agenda
But
is.
it is interesting because I think what it shows you is the incestuous circle of it all, how it's connected to everything. Is Barry Weiss is brought on by David Ellison with very little experience, no news channel experience whatsoever, to essentially be an ombudsman, straight up takeover of CBS News. Right? She rewards Tony DeCouple, who did this hitman job on Ta-Nehisi Coates for his book, where he tried to humanize Palestinians. Tony DeCouple then gets the anchor chair for CBS News. All these talented people get fired. Barry Weiss comes in, and Barry Weiss in her press, if you have read it or have followed it, seems to have two consistent themes: violently pro-Israel, number one, and number two, very much saying whatever billionaires want her to say. And according to the New York Times article, the voice in her ear is David Sachs. David Sachs is a billionaire who's in the Trump administration. Who is the czar of AI and crypto policy under Donald Trump?
Mhm.
David Sachs. Who was a friend and ally of Peter Thiel and Elon Musk? David Sachs. Who's a major funder and ally of Barry Weiss? David Sachs. So now you have Barry Weissification of corporate media. So now you got Paramount taking over CBS, and people are like, holy shit, this is terrible. You got these hard right, pro Israel, pro MAGA folks literally consolidating Paramount with Skydance. Like they got, it's not just CBS, right? It's CBS, it's Paramount, one of the five studios. It's
They
also
have Star
Nickelodeon.
Trek. Talk about, nerding out. They have Star Trek now.
Now they have Star Trek, so Star Trek's no longer woke. They just
No.
canceled Star Trek. Okay, and now, but that wasn't enough. Now they're going for the second merger, and you're saying that this war is helping the second, more dangerous merger.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the funding alone, right? We're at war right now. At war, we invaded, Iran with Israel, but we also have the UAE, who is very much involved in this war, and like their data centers are getting, blown up and whatnot. And so we have these allies, right, with Israel and the UAE, and part of the funding with this new merger, is coming from Ellison stocks with Oracle, sure, but a large part of it was coming from the Kushners with his, starts with an A. What's his company? The
The, the,
something
the,
is A, not APAC, but the other one that's,
the one
the
funded by
Affinity.
$2 billion with through Saudi
Affinity
Arabia.
partner, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was coming in, then he's like, "Oh, no,
Affinity
we're gonna step
Partners, right?
back."
Affinity Partners.
Yeah, and, like, and I believe one of the, some of that funding is coming from a brand new banking system that the UAE has, like, created with, one of the other princes over there, but it's part of their government banking system, and they're, like, wanting to spend money on helping get this merger done. So we have these allies of war who were like, "Oh, come on, these guys, look, they're helping us." Like, and it's not a national security risk for them to invest in this company. And so you've got just a lot of things crossing over at the same time. And when I look back to like Iraq, in 2003, on, the same day that Colin Powell is at the UN, waving around anthrax and all of the cameras are over there looking at him. Like within that same day on February 5th, you have Oracle, who's over in the UK, just signing all of these healthcare, deals and literally taking over their healthcare system, their government healthcare system. And by the time the war ends and everything's all said and done, Ellison is now effectively has Oracle embedded in all of that. And now you're in 2026 and they have these digital IDs that they can't get around. They have all of their healthcare that's being aggregated into this like pot of AI training. And it's insidious.
You said, about a month ago, on Drey Dossier, you had, the merger needs the war. It was about a month ago. You said the merger that needed a war, and then just about 4 days ago, you said the war that funded a merger. So is the cycle now complete? Did they accomplish their mission?
Well, I mean, I don't want to pretend I know exactly what their mission is, but I do see some patterns that are like, popping up, and a big one of that is this need for healthcare because, like, again, we have 2026, right? We have this invasion of Iran, and on February 11th, you look at Oracle that wins the CMS contract, which is Medicare and Medicaid data for 150 million Americans, on top of Cerner, which is your veteran data and is pretty much in every hospital next to Epic. And then on February 12th, the next day, he gets this huge Air Force $88 million contract. And then on the same day that we invaded Iran, on February 28th, I believe it was, or the evening of February 28th, you have Oracle authorized to run AI on federal data at the highest clearance level. So you have this kind of aggregation of government contracts and data is happening at the same time as this invasion. And so I can't help but look at this like pattern that happened with Iraq. Again, baseless claims that we go in on and then we come out, and now he's able to, kind of flip the script and do what he did to the UK with us.
Yeah, and so it's the war on terror on steroids, where a war against Iraq, an illegal war, based upon manufactured evidence. But at least that Bush administration tried to sell it to us. So give them credit. Weapons of mass destruction,
Yeah, at least it got Tony Blair out of office and into on Larry Ellison's yacht,
Oh, yeah.
I guess.
Oh, yeah, yeah, it's all incestuous, and all those folks now, they all made money through private military industrial complex, and they made money through Halliburton, and they made money through, Blackwater, but now the grift is just so open. So this is happening in real time, and Oracle, I think it was 2 months ago, a couple of months ago, it announced that it's laying off 30,000 employees to fund an AI
This
data center.
morning this morning, 6 AM, cold email to all 30,000 employees, "You're laid off." In
Oh,
the
so
most
they went ahead and
Larry
did it.
Ellison in the most Larry Ellison, like, FU way, 6 AM email, "Don't come into work today, you done," and 30,000 people are gone.
Yeah, because they couldn't get the bank funding for the AI data center, so like, "Oh, okay, we'll just lay off 30,000 employees, and that'll pay for it."
Yeah, private equity. I mean, Patrick Doyle writes does has a great YouTube channel talking about a lot of economic a lot of this economic convergence. But he did a piece recently just about how private equity is struggling, and like Blue Owl Capital is one of the ones that that pulled out of this Michigan Stargate data center, and these Stargate nodes are so expensive. These are the biggest nodes of the data centers, right? This is the deal we have with um the uh the Japanese bank and with the UAE about like getting this, these data centers around. And we have our Starship or our flagship one in the UAE. And we were supposed to have at 10, I believe, like roughly in the US. And they wouldn't announce which sites were which. I did a video about Project Tango, which is in Florida, which I'm pretty sure is one of those. But they need a huge like swaths of land. Like they need hundreds and hundreds of acres, and one of those was in Michigan. And but Blue Owl Capital pulled out and was like, Oracle's overspending. We can't get left hanging for this. And now Ellison's like using his Oracle stocks to fund this merger. But if people are, yeah, it's a very
No, but
confusing.
I think we should stick on that because it's global, right, folks? Because in order to
Mhm.
make this next merger happen, the next merger, we've talked about it on Left Hook a lot, but for those who haven't followed, is Netflix was in the running to acquire Warner Brothers Discovery. And at the last second, Netflix pulls out because it's not worth it. And we found out pretty much that Donald Trump was going to kill it anyway. And then another suitor came out of nowhere. And that other suitor was, wait for it, Paramount Skydance. Oh, the same company run by David Ellison. And Warner Brothers, excuse me. So that means Warner Brothers is one of the five studios. Also, Warner Brothers Discovery has HBO, which has John Oliver. Also, it has, wait for it, CNN. And David Ellison just openly admitted, "Oh yeah, we've had conversations with Donald Trump about the terrible direction that CNN is in. Yes, if we take it over, we'll come in and make sure we'll make corrections. All right, same thing with Barry Weiss has done to CBS. All right, so now Netflix says not worth it. They pull out. So it seems that this merger is going to go through. And if this merger goes through, that means the Ellisons have Paramount, they have Warner Brothers, they have CNN, they have CBS, they have Discovery, they have HBO.
And the money funding it is
There you go.
largely not American. So
There you go.
what are we doing?
Can you
Like,
tell them where
it's
the money's coming from?
yeah, listen, I feel like I want to pull up this web I have now, of just all of this UAE money. I've been talking with Cory Booker's office a bit about this because I know that they're finding different ways to kind of go, attack this. And he's getting together with a lot of, I think Adam Schiff and some governors and or congressional members in uh, California. And I just don't. I personally, the way I've kind of succumbed to the idea that we are not going to be able to stop this. Like it's going to go through, right? There's no way it wouldn't. But I think with it there like this is a huge national security issue, and what really bothers me about it is Oracle is considered a neutral party. Like when I read the contract, I think it was last week they sent out to all shareholders the shareholder agreement that they have to sign on April 20th or 21st. And I was reading through it, and Oracle is just mentioned as a neutral party when Oracle, I'm pretty sure, is going to be the pipes of the whole thing, just like it is with everything else. So now you have your consumer data right next to your healthcare data, right next to this military data, and you've got the UAE helping fund it. Like, how is this not
And
the big
Saudi
with
Arabia.
TikTok? Saudi Arabia as well. And with TikTok, there was a whole separate set of standards because he owns that as well. That Oracle, in order to run TikTok's data, there's this like oversight committee that was separate from the board that he put together. There was an auditing that had to be allowed because of the Chinese entities that were connected to it still, of the algorithm and all of that. I mean, that should be the same case here. And that's what I've been talking with Booker's office about. I'm like, how is that not, like, at least if this merger is going to go through, can we get a separate oversight of where that information is going? Because I truly don't, I think we're wasting a lot of energy, like running on a treadmill trying to stop it when I think we just need to put some protections before we get to that point.
Yeah, because this merger seems inevitable. Ellisons are going to control Paramount, CBS, CNN, Warner Brothers, Discovery. We were going to get to it, but folks, if you didn't know that Larry Ellison took over TikTok as well, and one of the major complaints of the Broligarchy was the children were radicalized not by the genocide that they saw unfolding on their screen, but by the TikToks. I'm not making this up. Mitt Romney said this, Hillary Clinton said this, Larry Ellison said this, Barry Weiss said this. So you got to neutralize TikTok while also you take over a very, very influential social media app that has the data of millions of people. Who now owns that? Larry Ellison of Oracle. Who now owns Paramount CBS? Larry Ellison of Oracle. Who now has made contracts with the United States government during this war, as Dre told us?
Larry Ellison.
Larry Ellison. Who is the sixth largest person? Who is the single largest donor to the Friends of IDF? Larry Ellison. Who is one of the largest, biggest supporters of Donald Trump? Larry Ellison. His son, David Ellison. They're if you will, reeks. I'm going to call them reeks. Barry Weiss and others are put in place. And now you have the situation where, in order to make the sale go through, he cannot do it without Saudi and UAE money to the tunes of billions because he doesn't have it.
And I just sent you, I texted you the map I did of the UAE money just to show you how literally interconnected WBD is with this. But you have these
Oh,
partners
wow.
like, yeah, with like Lamad Holding is one of the new UAE. Wait, I wonder. I wish I could share this with your audience,
So you
but
got
I'll
UAE,
post it some.
you got UAE, you could actually share your screen if you want. You got the UAE president connected to the National Security Advisor, who, by the way, the National Security Advisor, Sheikh Danoun, we found out last month, who was the person who invested $500 million in Donald Trump and his Tweedledee Tweedledum's World Liberty Fund crypto grift. It was, wait for it, Sheikh Danoun of UAE. This was before the election. He invests $500 million in their crypto firm. Donald Trump gets elected. What country gets the premium, prestigious NVIDIA AI chips that our national security officials said, hey, maybe you don't want to sell this to foreign countries? UAE.
Well, and also right before the TikTok deal went through, there was a meeting with, I believe, Ellison and like Rubio or some, I forget who exactly was in the room, but Donald Trump was not there. It was like a week before China was like, all right, we'll sell you TikTok. And it was the NVIDIA, like it was an NVIDIA partner, Ellison, and like one other person in with the president of China. And they all of a sudden, like chips are going out to them, and all of a sudden we get TikTok. I'm like, well, that sounds like a quid pro quo if I've ever heard one.
It's very a quid pro quo. It's just business. And in this chart, you have the money eventually going to Warner Brothers
Yeah.
Discovery. Oh, look at that. $7 billion commitment for a $110 billion deal coming through UAE, Saudi Arabia. Last time I checked was they want to get them to get $20 billion. And so now
I'll
you have
share.
this. Go ahead.
I'll share just real my screen for a second, just
Yeah,
because
go for
who
it.
knows what's on my screen, but so that people
Make
can
sure
see what
yeah, make sure everything else is going.
close all the weird tabs. But
We
yeah,
won't judge
it's
them.
pretty insane. Um, yeah, I'll work on this while we talk because I have to turn on permission. But yeah, it's pretty insane. And Lamad is a brand new UAE that was like used to be the Crown Prince Sheikh Khaled Tanoon, MBZ's son,
Yeah.
essentially. But yeah, that's a brand new like government funding holding, and that's the one that's funding the WBD deal. But people are like, oh no, don't worry, it's a new funding, but it's like still connected to the same family that like yeah, that funded the entire government. So
Here we are.
also, I don't know that I can share my screen. So sorry, guys. We'll post it on Substack later.
We'll post it. We'll post it. Once Dre posts it, I'll share it and post it and give her a link. But we have now this merger is going to go through. So they're controlling TikTok, they're controlling news. Now they're controlling cultural production, and cultural production is key to fighting fascism. They will own two of the major five studios. Amazon is now owned by Bezos, who also took over Washington Post. Right? You got Apple Studios. We saw that Tim Apple was right there on inauguration day. So Apple's now making movies. Apple's also making TV shows, right? So you see the complete gobbling up of all of our culture, but also our data. And Dre, can you make a connection for those who don't understand? At the end of the day, these people really just need our data. Like the data is the gold here.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have AI is just another idea without data and training, right? I mean, that's the whole copyright battles that the that Hollywood, that the art community has been fighting against. And so you reach these points in like, wanting to get to this level of intelligence that profits all of the people who make it, that you need to get new training data, right? So you've got, they know how to, LLMs can now read to us the same, thing that Hemingway wrote, or that, your friend who has a blog wrote. And now they need, in order to keep profiting from these other companies who want to use it for more targeted advertising, which is Oracle's favorite thing. I mean, selling access to people and like getting, more money from health companies, health insurance companies, which is the most egregious one, if you ask me. And that's what really worries me about this healthcare data convergence is if we allow these like LLMs, these models, whoever it be, Grok, train on our healthcare data. Not only is that something that's ours, it's private. It shouldn't be something that is allowed to be given. But on a morality level, like aside, you have these health insurance companies who would pay premium amounts of money to these companies that like these Cerners, these Epics, whoever, if they could get access to a tool that, like, let's say, looks at you and says, all right, he's got, a family history of this, that, and the third. You may not even know, there's whatever blood, problem that could pop up for you later on. They could like price your premium based off of that. Or they could say,
Or
she's been
price you
through,
out.
or price you out. Or they could say, oh, she's got a mental health problem. She went to therapy and had a psychiatrist like 10 years ago. She might be fine now, but that's a bit of a risk for us. So we're going to go ahead and price it there. And because like proprietary secrets and trade secrets, we're not allowed to see what these algorithms look like. We don't know how that aggregation of data is being used, which is just like, this is what HIPAA's meant to protect. But HIPAA was written at a time where like the idea that a large language model could take de-identified data and like trace it back to you within 10 minutes didn't exist. And so like HIPAA needs a huge revamping, but that obviously is not really going to be in the cards probably in the next year. So that's going to take a good decade. But in the meantime, we need to put up dig as many trenches for them to fall in as possible until we get to the point that we can revamp HIPAA, because it is absurd the amount of information that you can get from that. I mean, Ellison, most people don't know this little fun fact. Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos, Ellison was a very early investor in Theranos. And Elizabeth Holmes, scammer extraordinaire, also was like selling this idea of, oh, you send in your blood, it's de-identified, meaning they strip your name, your social security number. I think it's up to 11 identifying traits about you they have to take away for HIPAA compliance. And then like these Silicon Valley billionaires were investing in it because they're like, hey, we have these tools that can actually re-identify this data pretty quickly. So if you can get all of this blood, we can re-identify it to people and we can start training these, freaking algorithms. And the fact that Ellison invested in that so early on is just, of course.
Of course he did. And that's why I never did the 23s and me. I'm like, yeah, I'm probably not going to do that because I don't want to give my genetic data to a mass potential surveillance AI algorithm that will use it for nefarious purposes. And now you see that data, there's no security there for our data, right? They're gobbling
Well,
up data because data is the new currency. And with data, and I really appreciate you spending the time explaining to people, because to most people it's not, it's not common. They're like, well, what are you going to do with it? Surveillance, abuse your
Well, the
privacy.
UAE, if the UAE is funding this, and they are funding a lot of like these, mergers, acquisitions, they're investing in our government. The UAE has the largest surveillance apparatus next to China in the world. I mean, they are. I think it's like every square mile, there's somewhat of like 100 different cameras, like on streets, some absurd number like that. They are surveillance, central. And so, if they have any say in these investments or like, I see it going downhill very fast.
Yeah, and for the 23andMe, I just wanted to fact check myself. It was October 2023 where 23andMe disclosed a massive data breach. Huh.
Yeah.
Affecting 7 million users, primarily targeting Ashkenazi Jewish and Chinese ancestry data through credential stuffing attacks. Hackers access sensitive personal information, including DNA, relational data, and ancestry reports. A $30 million settlement was proposed for such a class action lawsuit.
These data breaches are the most like obvious like scams to me. So yeah, data breaches happen, but like Oracle, for instance, like a week after it bought Cerner, veteran data, all of this data, it was 2025, January 22nd, 2025. All of a sudden, Cerner has this huge, Oracle data breach, and it was like the scope of it were all of your obviously like the healthcare information, doctor's notes, your social security number, like all of this stuff. And most of the people, I think it was like somewhat 30% of the people who had their data breach, they didn't even receive an email until 2 weeks after they found out that there was like a data breach. And so like you see what the priorities are here, because if they claim data breach, oh no, it went to some offshore, whatever, we don't know who those guys are. Like, come on. Like this is what I'm talking about. We need these like firewalls. We need some oversight that's a little independent if they're going to keep buying this stuff up.
Well, you know what? I don't think we're going to get that oversight. I hope I'm wrong. We have to keep trying. And the reason why is something that I've been trying to sound the alarm on the left hook for the couple of weeks is I'm looking at the obscene amount of money, Dre, that the Silicon Valley and the Oligarch are pouring into Democratic primary races because they realize the jig is up. They realize the majority of Americans, about 70 plus percent of Americans, don't want these AI data centers. They realize the more they speak, they look like psychotic, dumb supervillains. I'm talking about the Sam Altmans, the Peter Thiels. And so Bloomberg has reported, I think 2 weeks ago, that they're spending or thinking up to spending up to $500 million in the California primary races. Joe Lonsdale, the co-founder of Palantir, another surveillance company, that gobbles up our data, and along with other investors, is spending $100 million on both sides of the aisle for pro-growth deregulation policies. You have Democrats, the XD-CCC chair, Sherry Bustos, whose clients include OpenAI and Oracle, is now the president of a new PAC that is going to promote Democrats and promote pro-growth deregulation ads in front of.
Yeah, the amount of dark money offers I've gotten, like emails of, "Hey, we would love for you to work with us. It's just a like, it's a grant, thing. You only have to post 5 videos a year." I'm like, "Geez, it doesn't take that long to figure out who's funding these things."
Yeah, can I just keep you for 5 more minutes because you said you were right about the
As
ballroom.
long as you want. Oh, as long as you want. Well, okay, that you would make me sound heady about it. But no,
You
yeah, the
can
ballroom is.
flex. You can. These are the small
I
nerd
mean,
ones we
okay, I
have
will
to
say
interact.
there were enough people who were like, "This idiot with their conspiracies." I'm like, if I were to come up with a conspiracy, I'd hope if I'm just making things up, I could come up with something sexier than data latency problems under, the infrastructure of the East Wing. But yeah, the ballroom situation. It's weird that he calls it a shed, right? Like that's we like I called it a lid. I feel like shed's a little a little grotesque, but I think that that speaks volumes where it's like, he goes from promoting a huge ballroom worth billions of dollars and gonna have chandeliers and all of this to like, okay, what's a shed? But like, oh, it's gonna be so fancy, the fanciest shed you've ever seen.
$400
Pretty
million
insane.
check for America.
Um, yeah, it's pretty crazy, and I have a feeling I it's going to be expanding. I'm working on a video piece which should be posted later today, but that I can see where this is expanding to, but something that I'll leave people with if they ever want to learn more about the military decisions we make and why we make them. I would say China is a great place to look at. I think it was January of 2025 that satellites from the CIA saw that China was building this huge underground military center, and they saw the outline of it, and obviously, couldn't get too many details about it. But I think that that's interesting that that was announced at the end of January, and then by June, the East Wing's torn down, and now like that was where some of my pattern recognition had connected things. So if you ever want to know, like, well, what's the military's next plan? I would say just keep an eye on China. That'll
So,
probably.
so what you're suggesting, it's not just a ballroom.
Oh yeah, no, sorry. The thesis, not a ballroom. It's definitely it serves its purpose as a lid. I see it as I said, AI data center underground, which can mean a lot of things. And people think about like these Amazon data centers, right, with the smoke plumes and the loud noises. But anywhere you're running hardened infrastructure and you're running war, making war decisions based off of it, you're going to need a lot of processing capability, like a lot of data racks, and you're going to need ways to cool it, and it's a whole process. And so those have to be pretty big spaces. And yeah, I have a feeling they're going to be probably expanding that outwards. Sherman Park, I saw, was in the NCPC, which is the planning committee for that. They're getting proposed the idea that Sherman Park, they want to dig underneath and create this entry center for when the diplomats come, and it's like a secured entrance to be able to come into the East Wing underneath it, which is why probably those stairs, like on, what was it, the South Side or something, led to nowhere. It's because you're gonna have to enter through Sherman Park anyways. But
But we need that $400 million ballroom, of course, and the fact that he just gets to do it and no one says anything is remarkable. But then also, have you seen some of the donors to this ballroom? Because I've been paying attention, and let me just rattle some names: Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Meta, Apple, HP, Nvidia, Coinbase, Gemini, Tether, Lockheed Martin, Booz Allen, Caterpillar. I just, why would they be so interested in this ballroom?
I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, anytime I feel like, I don't know about you, Ali, but anytime I see that my money's not being spent on something, anytime I see that, like, he's like, oh, don't worry, we're not going to spend your money. I'm like, you have no problem spending my money. So, like, why aren't you spending it this time if it's for you? You spend, like, what, to Air Force One makeovers, and I
You want
believe you had
$200 billion for this war. You just asked
right,
for it.
exactly. We pay for it. The IDF is all our money too. So it's like, if you're not spending our money, then that means this isn't for you. This is for somebody else. And if this is for somebody else, and it's those names you just listed off, then what do they want? Because I know that they don't give two F's about a ballroom. Most of them probably own their own ballroom somewhere anyways. Why are they all investing, like competitors of each other, investing in the same thing? That's, that kind of follow the
Well,
money
they would say,
mentality.
well, the top line superficial analysis and what's been happening in corporate media, and I don't blame them for this. And for most people, they think, oh, quid pro quo. Donald Trump wants a ballroom. We'll give him $2 million. Who gives a shit? He'll like us.
Yeah. They've been giving their gifts, they come and give the sacrifice of, what was it? Apple gave like a yeah, exactly. Some
The
sort
golden
of
apple, literally.
real beta moves, not gonna lie, guys. Like, yeah, real beta moves. But they're doing that already. Like, they're already investing in PACs. They're doing the money thing for Trump where they need to. They don't need to do this on top of it. Like, because it's not for Trump. Like, Trump would spend our money and then he'd have them pay him off in some other way. So I think it's a more complicated when people say, oh, this is just a scam where he's gonna, scrape off the top and stuff. I mean, sure, like he does that with all of his real estate, but he's getting money from these guys. He doesn't need to make a public thing about it. For if it was our money, like, I think he'd be, scraping off the top for sure. But I think he's getting what he needs from these guys. These guys need whatever's under there.
And also, I've said before, I'll say it again. I hope I'm wrong. He ain't leaving. People who engage in this type of behavior, they ain't leaving. Legally or peacefully. Let me put it this way: he is not leaving legally or peacefully. And There's a lid, but there also functions as a bunker. And I also want to remind people that Pam Bondi and Stephen Miller and other members of the Trump administration are now living on military bases, which is totally normal and totally what people do who plan on leaving, public life after they've served their term.
In some ways, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And in other ways, I would say something to consider when you know how they say, once you train an AI model, you can't undo that, right? The genie's out of the bottle, you can't undo it. So the way I think about it is like maybe he will leave one day, who knows? Or obviously he's going to die at some point. Um, I'm sorry if the CIA is watching that. But he,
Natural death quickly, hopefully.
natural, yeah, no, not from conspiracy. But if that is the case, then whatever is under there, which I believe is going to have a really deep AI capabilities, it's under the executive branch, meaning the like government branch for that. So it's executive order. So that means Congress doesn't necessarily have to see what's going on, and that's what the executive authority allows for having it be there. If all of our data, like the healthcare data, the Oracle stuff, whatever, who he's famously not on the list, the Oracle level for the bunker, but I can't believe that that's not true. Then whatever trains, or if our data goes into training whatever military apparatus AI model, it doesn't matter who comes in next. It doesn't matter if we get Obama again, in 3 years. The way that that thing is trained right now is going to be how it's trained. So in some ways, yeah, like he doesn't need to be there if whatever training, whatever algorithms they put together, that's how they're going to have the government run, then that means their say is in there forever. And it would take a lot of training. It'd be really hard to correct that. And I don't know the technical abilities of what that would take, but I do know with regular models, it's really hard to correct those weights once they're set. So that's why there's like an urgency to this of even if he does leave, he doesn't leave, neither here nor there if what's getting trained right now is under his authority.
Yeah, and it's going to be generational, and it's not really under even his authority. It's his handlers. It's the Larry Ellisons and the David Sachs and the Palantirs and the Broligarchy, part of the Epstein class. And again, I want to remind everyone that the czar of Donald Trump's AI and crypto policy is David Sachs. David Sachs is also the whisperer to Barry Weiss. Barry Weiss now runs CBS, which is run by David Ellison and Larry Ellison. David Sachs and Larry Ellison are key figures in the Trump administration's technology policy. Sachs is co-chairing the Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. Guess who's a prominent member and advisor? Larry Ellison. It's all there, folks. We're not
Hey, the
conspiracy theorists.
CEO of everything, baby. Trump told us on his first day in office. So
I alone can do everything. Dre, shameless. Thank you so much. I hope you can come back. I hope this wasn't too painful. I took time, folks. It took me 2 weeks. I got her email, and I emailed again, and I emailed again, and
I
time
no, I
zones.
had so much fun. Listen, I love the left hook. Genuinely, and I'm not just saying this. Favorite Substack live I've done so far. So thank
Oh,
you for
wonderful.
having me.
Dre, can you please shamelessly promote yourself?
Yeah, subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. Same Drey Dossier. We just crossed over 100,000.
That's great. That's great.
Crazy. And yes, keep up on Substack. It's free to subscribe. It always will be. And I appreciate that everybody is so interested in this stuff. That's what kind of gives, I think, a lot of this hope for me is that I'm not just screaming into the void. There are people who care, and that's what matters.
No, it's people do care, and what I've realized is if you just explain it to folks, if you just take a little bit of time, people care and people get it. And I think more and more that it's revealed that we have an Epstein class, the oligarchy, and how they're so intertwined with Donald Trump, and this is literally creating harmful domestic and foreign policy. I think people are finally waking up, Dre. So that's why we need people like Dre, who's like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Like 10 years ago, I joked, this might be an outdated reference, but you're in Hollywood. I always joke that you would be like that character in the first 10 minutes of the Bourne movie who rings up Jason Bourne and says, I have the secret documents. Meet me in the tunnel. And right before you're about to exchange it, like a bullet comes, you're like, I just share this information. But now you're
I mean,
alive and thriving and giving it to the
yeah,
people.
listen, and I can take a bullet better than that. Like you'll have to get up pretty early in the morning to do that. But no, you can call me a conspiracy theorist, call me whatever you want. As long as you're reading it, that's what matters because this is important information. And whether I'm right or wrong or whatever, like we need more people just at least having their eyes on this data conversation. This is probably the most consequential moment for whatever future governance we have. And so keep an eye on it.
For the 1,600 people who joined us, this is Dre from the Dre Dossier. This is Left Hook. There's no paywalls on Left Hook. I'm a terrible capitalist. If you have some money, give it to Dre Dossier. Go check out her Substack and her YouTube.
Give it to people fighting data centers too. They need it.
Give it to people fighting AI data centers, and the majority is with us. A majority of Americans are now against the data centers. Three things the majority of Americans agree on: release the Epstein files. This war is terrible, and no more data centers. And we're going to publish this on the Left Hook and Dre Dossier later tonight. Thank you all for watching. Be kind, be informed, and please, oh please, don't be a fascist. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Come back.